in previous conversations about creativity, we've spoken about innovation, because I know that you've written several books on innovation, and you specialize in innovation. And when we're talking about innovation, we very often start with ideas. And this year, the focus for the conference is about presence, which in my view begins even before the idea. You know, the ideas emerge in a way from our presence. So for you, you know, having written so many books, having had so many ideas, what do you think of this notion that those ideas needed to begin from your presence, as it were?
The word presence is very powerful. It means being there, but it's very close. It's not the same to the word action. It's not simply being, it's also doing. So ideas, yes, come definitely from being and from experiencing, and actually from doing. And I believe the doing part is very important. And I personally learned a lot from the way people behave. I saw people behaving, both live and online, during the COVID crisis.
Right. And I suppose, yeah, because when you talk about presence and being, for me, being is an action as well as a passive state.
Yeah.
And
if we,
yeah.
And if we take it, if we look at it from that point of view, then you can see very clearly which people were actors rather than spectators. And that was, I think, very interesting to see, very interesting.
That's a very good distinction, isn't it? Actor versus spectator. What did you notice? So what was interesting about that for you?
One of the most interesting things for me was to observe the number of innovations that happened since COVID, since COVID became a pandemic. Let's say it was declared a pandemic, I think, early February or late January. But from that moment, and even before, the number of innovations which came out or which were kicked off to deal with it and to deal with life and work in entirely new circumstances humans had not experienced before in any large scale. I mean, living humans. Previous generations, I'm sure, had pandemic problems, but the sheer number of new ideas for me was incredible. Incredible. A lot of them were by the time some epidemiologist or some, let's say, scientist had some valid results, immediately you had all these innovations coming up. So the virus is transmitted by air. If you're closer than 2 meters, you might get it. So there are so many new designs of office space, so many ways of setting up and disinfecting screens and windows and things like that. Then I don't know how many different types of masks I saw. Masks that were produced by 3D printers at home, by car manufacturers started producing them. And one of the most interesting ones I saw is a transparent mask, which is really good because we say so much with our lips. And if people can see the lips, communication is much more powerful than if they just see something non-transparent, which is what most masks are. But it's not, of course, just masks and distance. It's hundreds of other things as well.
Yeah, so presence implies a kind of responsiveness. So in all of
Uh,
those examples that you mention,
yeah,
through one's presence, there has been um, a huge amount of responsiveness to the external environment.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it was, for me, it's amazing. It's still happening, of course.
Yeah. And you mention your book, which touches on some of these things that we're experiencing through the COVID pandemic. In what way? You know,
Oh, about 1 year before the onset of COVID, I had published a book called Y 2.200K, a chronicle. It's a visual novel, and it deals with 150 years in the future. So a space vessel leaves the Earth to go to the closest solar system, which is Alpha Centauri. The voyage will take 150 years. It's full of frozen embryos and frozen cosmonauts. And in the meantime, from the year 2050 to the year 2200, things happen on Earth. And some of the things are at the same time, there are some aliens threatening Earth. They're threatening them with peace. If you don't stop making wars, we shall use force against you. And it's an imaginary way of how humanity might deal with these problems. And I imagined a world where there is a real battle between science and superstition, and a real battle between nationalism and internationalism. And I don't want to reveal everything.
of course not. No, no. And that's another kind of presence. The story
Yeah.
also takes a presence, and I suppose there's power in our being, and there's power in the stories that we create. They things emerge from telling the story. Even insights may
Yes.
emerge, and actions
Yes.
may emerge.
Absolutely.
And then they create an impact, and that impact transforms our presence.
It does. It does. There are consequences to our actions. There are consequences to our thinking only if we act upon our thinking. Or there are consequences to our thinking in the way we internalize what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But change happens with action. It can't happen with inaction.
And I suppose that everything is in motion in some way, that even though we might not actually see that action, we might be thinking about it, we might be churning that idea. So in a way, there's an internal action going on during that incubation process.
Yes, absolutely. And COVID enabled us to look at the world in many different ways. Now, I smile a little when I hear about the new normal. Uh, and I guess the new normal is a time when we don't get surprises that are this big in our lives. If there is a new normal, one of the discoveries we have all made, it's things that we could have been doing anyway, and they were good for us. Like you, for example, have been doing an online conference for quite a few years now. Is it 4
We,
years now,
that's right.
Jesvir?
Yeah,
And all the live conferences I have seen have now gone online.
that's right. Yeah.
We could have been doing it. They're different.
Mm.
And the challenge for us is to make them still interesting and relevant.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I
Yeah.
mean, the carbon footprint is much lower by doing the conferences online. That was one of the reasons why I chose to do the online conferences. It's so much cheaper, more convenient, and I get a very diverse range of people participating, which I couldn't have, you know, yourself, for example, in Cyprus, and somebody else in New Zealand, somebody else in Australia. I would never have been able to attract people from a diverse environment if I wasn't doing it online. So there are so many benefits out there.
Yeah. And there are other benefits. People can look at them asynchronously at their own time.
That's
If they
right.
wish. They can, there are a lot of other benefits as well.
Mm. And also we're creating assets, I suppose. We're creating the value, because very often when I attend live conferences, the next day I've forgotten half of what I heard. Whereas this way we can listen back, you know, whenever we want to. So it's not lost. That knowledge is not lost. We can continue to regurgitate and you know, think about, contemplate on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's look back at, you know, your presence, and your presence as an innovator, your presence as a creative person, your presence as a magician, as an alchemist in some ways. You know, how do you feel that your presence has enabled you to express your creativity? Is it just simply about taking action, or is there something more to it than that?
It's definitely also new learning. I have never learned more about working online. A lot of my work is speaking, training, and writing. Speaking and training, business was bad the first 6 months of the year. We could not do any live training anywhere for quite a while. Everybody was in lockdown, and I don't think I wanted to expose myself either, or expose other people. So what did I do? Like many other people, we roamed around the internet, and I figured out ways of doing the type of training and speaking online, with its advantages and some disadvantages as well. That's at the first degree. The very immediate, source of winning one's bread. However, there are so many other ways in which this has impacted us. How we live together in a home, as a family, as a couple, as a larger family, as a group of friends, as a community, and in the world. And we have learned a lot. If we take Homo economicus, the way we shop is different. The way we think about our basic commodities is different. There's been a big reduction, for example, in the use of cosmetics, which is interesting. And a lot of forecasters are not seeing a return, even if there's a vaccine and everything. Some people may have realized that, well, it wasn't so necessary after all, or some things were not so necessary after all.
Mm-hmm.
And an interesting question is, let's imagine a vaccine or something which allows us to return to the contact freedom that we had in conditions of good hygiene. Are we going to go back to everything that we were doing before? I don't think so. I think we will go back to some of the things, including bad habits, but we will also have moved a step ahead in a lot of other things.
Right. And I suppose it's a process of learning, you know, creativity. There needs to be this continual learning, this continual feedback loop, and that's where the transformation comes in. And once we are transformed, we don't neatly fit into that same mold that we were in previously. And as you say, there are some things that still fit and some things that we've outgrown.
Yes, absolutely.
So with the creative process then, so we understand that it's a learning process, that it requires responsiveness to the external environment.
Yeah.
What is it that needs to take place in our presence that we can actively be more present in a way that is more powerful?
I would say let's try to um, something which might sound small but isn't on a bigger scale. We all have, for everybody, there's a time lag between thinking and doing. So we have a problem, we have a creative solution, or we imagine a new solution to a problem or challenge or whatever. And then we need a bit of courage and perhaps a few other things, depending on the problem, to go out and do it, to go out and implement the solution, if you like. If we can reduce that time, that delay, that hesitation, that maybe zeal for perfection, it's in our best interest. And we were pushed to do that in many cases during COVID. So I think our presence is a little bit saying, okay, the world's moving faster, and even faster with COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a difference between the radical changes that the virus has forced us to make, as opposed to those incremental changes. You know, like even without the pandemic, even without the virus, on a daily basis, if we take tiny steps to learn something new, then we are becoming more present, more visible. You know, like you being a speaker, you know that your presence as a speaker, there needs to be the visibility. You can't be a speaker, an effective and powerful speaker, if you're not visible. And by visible, I mean in many different realms.
Well, a speaker without an audience is a drama student preparing for an audition or something. But obviously, a speaker without an audience cannot survive professionally.
There needs to be the visibility, right? There needs to be the visibility in the same way that a leader cannot be a leader without followers. A speaker needs to have the audience. And so earlier on, you talked about the actor versus the spectator. So you cannot afford to be a spectator. Your presence can't be that of a spectator if you want to be an actor. There's
exactly. But you see, I think people did whatever they could as fast as they could. Let me give you an example. I'm an alumnus of London Business School, and London Business School offered a series of COVID-related lectures online. And the professor who was running them as a facilitator, he said, our first reaction with COVID was we simply took our MBA program and we put it online, exactly as it was before. Mm-hmm. But of course, we know that learning online cannot be the same as teaching face-to-face, teaching and learning face-to-face. However, our reaction was to do the old things with a new medium. Mm. And now the challenge is how to reformat education, because we have different means. If I make a parallel, if you ever watch the earliest cinematography from Georges Méliès, for example, late 19th century in France, who was also a magician, you will see that Méliès basically filmed stage tricks, but he used editing, which was new for the world. The new thing was we can edit films. And editing at the time was you cut cellulose and you cut it and stick it together. But that was a big new thing because you could make somebody vanish using cellulose. Of course, a century after, filmmaking has moved in completely different directions. It's taken a life of its own, and it's in fact much more than just editing. I think the same will happen. Maybe in 10 years, Zoom will be a relic of the past. We will have much better technologies, and we'll use them more judiciously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose that we're using them to make our presence felt, all of these new technologies.
Yeah.
This conversation between us wouldn't be possible without the technology. So the technology is facilitating our presence to be the connectedness and being able to join the dots.
And if I may add something which has something to do with my work, we have synchronous and asynchronous online learning. There is no way one can substitute for the other. They're two different, useful ways of learning, but synchronous learning, which at other times would be live, it can also happen online. And the idea of presence is not one talking head. The idea of presence is we are all here, especially in adult learning. We're all here, we're all looking at a subject possibly with different experiences and with different needs and perspectives for what we want to learn. And the sharing itself is what makes the learning. So the good trainer who works synchronously, and I repeat, I believe this is necessary, synchronous working, is a trainer who can design the type of activities and the type of interaction that that engages people and therefore improves their learning. And we think we can't do it online, but of course we can. Of course we can. And even with the very simple technology of bad quality polls and whiteboards and little breakout rooms, you don't need all the bells and whistles. It's better if you have them. But with what we have, we can do a lot.
Yes, and Dimis, this is an important point. We share the background in terms of being educators, and I agree with you that a good teacher, even with bad technology being present, they can facilitate deep learning. On the other hand, earlier you talked about some people who just put their MBA courses online just as they were, and even they might say, well, they're doing just as well online as they were in real life. And one of the reasons that they might be doing just as well is that the teachers, when they were delivering those sessions, they weren't really present in the first place, you see. So therefore there's no difference. The students are just experiencing exactly what they were experiencing in real life. It's just basically content rather than presence.
Exactly, and I think in British universities, I don't think that exists in American universities. You have the title of lecturer. A lecturer is somebody who talks and other people listen, basically. What have good lecturers done when they found out that people's attention span is in fact just a few minutes? What have they done when they found out that it used to be maybe 5 minutes maximum, and now it's down to 3 minutes maximum, or 2, for reasons of society and younger people being different and all that? What do you do about that? If you're a good lecturer, you don't continue lecturing for an hour. So they took the program, they put it online. I would like to think that the good lecturers, the good professors, the good teachers, will modify their way to make the whole experience engaging with students, which they certainly did live as well.
Yeah. And, you know, again, I think it is to do with the power of the presence of the teacher, because you can put a teacher with a very powerful presence and they might not know the content that the students need to learn. You know, I'm thinking about my own experience as a teacher, when sometimes you have to go in as a substitute teacher. You don't know what content, but you can still create a very deep and powerful learning experience, even without not knowing anything about the content that they have to learn, through your presence,
Yes.
through being a catalyst for these ideas to emerge from what they already know, perhaps.
If you allow me here to mention Tyagi, his full name is Sivasailam Thiagarajan. He has a PhD in cognitive sciences. He's, for me, one of the best designers of interactive learning, live and online. And I have learned so much from him. And his own point of view, and I have a lot to add for it, but his own point of view is a lecture can be useful for a limited number of reasons. One of them, a good reason, is when the lecturer has exclusive knowledge. That is important for people. But then the lecturer must know when he has to stop lecturing, or she has to stop lecturing, do something else, and then come back to giving out the exclusive knowledge. In most, or in a lot of adult learning, people relate to themselves and people know more than the trainer. And the big challenge is, how do we mobilize the knowledge that is there in the room or in the online room so that it's shared in a way that makes the overall experience and the outcome more powerful. A second reason why lecturing is important is because lecturers like the sound of their own voice. But that's not important for everybody.
Yeah, I suppose professors have exclusive knowledge. You know, the reason that they have become professors is because they have specialized, and they are the only people in the world to have knowledge about that particular area that they've researched and become experts in. So we do need to know what they have to say, but perhaps we can read their book, you know, but in order to hear their discussion of it, it does need to be interactive, I suppose. Because otherwise, if it is just solely the content of it, that can be read in an article or a book or by listening to a podcast. We don't actually need to be physically present.
Exactly, exactly. But we do so much learn. I think the best, and I'm thinking more of adult education, but a lot of it is applicable to children too. When you walk into a room, make the assumption that the room or the totality of people who are there know more about what you're going to talk about than you do. So make sure they bring out what they already know. And
Yeah.
by all means, offer the tips as well. But engage them. That is the presence. Making the presence happen, if you like, in training.
Yeah. So you as the speaker on the stage, if you become a catalyst, if you become the alchemist in synthesizing
Yeah.
knowledge that they have, and it becomes, so it's not just about you, it's about the whole, rather than a single fragmented isolated person. It's about, yeah.
Exactly. And we have to get out of the the star system of presenters and lecturers. I've been part of it. I'm as guilty as anybody on this side of it. But this is what the conference organizers or my clients have asked for as well. But I think it's more profound when the interactivity is when the presenter, okay, the presenter can make a few star remarks and some few useful and new insights and contributions. However, if she uses the knowledge that is already present and mobilizes that, I think the results are more powerful as a generalization.
Yeah, it becomes a very much more powerful presence when it's, you know, the audience is also involved, and as you say, they're interacting, they're synthesizing. Yeah, I'm relating to the classroom situation. So, you know, the situation where the teacher thinks that they're the star compared with the teacher who thinks the students are the stars, you know, and that they are only like one of the stars who are there to maybe build the bridges so that the light shines from all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Excellent. So to sum up, Dimis, presence, emergence and impact, in what way has there been an impact on you of writing all the books that you've written? You know, those books have emerged from you. What impact have they made on you?
Well, you mean what impact on me, or what impact have they had on other people?
Well, I'm sure that they've had a lot of impact on other people, but what impact have they had on you? In what way have they transformed your presence?
Well, if you like, when I finish a piece of work, whether it's a book or simply a blog, something much shorter, a little article, a workshop, in the best of cases, and in most cases, there is a sense of accomplishment. Here's something I have done. I have a right to feel good about it, proud about it if it's good. If I have completely different views 5 years later, I have to declare them and denounce what I believed or what I wrote 5 years ago. But the point is, this stock of knowledge, which is realized in articles, in speeches, in training, in books, is also a source of wealth for moving on. So presence, emergence, making it actually concrete, that is the impact. And for me, this is very important, because if the action were not there, my own learning and my own contribution in the future would be much poorer.
Yeah. And instead, you've continued to strive, you've continued to learn and take action and transform through your learning.
I like what I do. I love what I do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Dimis. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you once again. And I look forward to...
Thank you very much, Jesvir. Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conference and to also hearing other interviews and what other people have to say too.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Dimis. Bye for now.